In this final video for our Google Sheets long-term dashboard project, we're going to put the final touches on our score meters here on the right-hand side, as well as put all of the finishing touches on our print areas and make this dashboard usable. So let's get after it. Okay, so we're back, and as a reminder of how far we have come in this project, we, in the last video, created all of our boxes for our score charts as well as started to pull those values out. Now in this video, we are going to finalize those scores as well as create all of our charts for these boxes and basically finish off this dashboard. Now, as a quick kind of reminder, if you are finding any value in these videos, if you could like and subscribe to the channel as well as share these videos, that would really help me out, helps me grow, helps me continue to put out more content, and then helps me provide more value to you. So with that out of the way, let's get after this part of the project. So in order to create this score, what we're going to have to do is go back to our data viz reference tab, where, if you remember, we started to pull out the last time that test was performed as well as the value of that test. And now what we're going to do is create the actual score. And we're going to use the same scoring rules that we did for all of our other charts. We're going to scale everything to a value of 0 to 100. 0 being the lowest value in that data set and 100 being the highest value in that data set. Now, what we can do here is we can use a VLOOKUP formula. So we can just do something like this: high, low. And what I'll do here is just use that VLOOKUP formula. So what I'll do is go equals VLOOKUP, open this up, and what I want to look for is the name of my test, in this case, counter movement jump, and then comma, and then the range that I want to look for it is in my test setup tab, and I will select all of these cells here, so test setup A to D, and then for my high value, it's going to be column 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So if I go back to my data viz reference and hit comma, it's going to ask me which column I want to return. We know column 4, and then we'll finish this off with false so that we can search the entire data. So when I hit enter, you can see that now that actually gives me that value, right? So that formula right there is the same as if I was to basically type in that value. And we're gonna do the same thing for the low. So I'll copy this and then I'll paste it under low. And instead of the 4th column, I want the 3rd. So that's gonna be the low value. Okay, so from here now, all I'm going to do is add some $signs so that I can drag this. So under AF5, I know that my values are always going to be in AF. So I'm going to put a $sign there and hit enter. And I'll do the same thing for AF5 over here. So now let's build this actual formula. So for our scores, if you remember, it was value minus low over high minus low, and then plus or times 100. So let's start to build this formula. So we'll type equals, comma, comma, because we're going to do some math here. Our first one is going to be the value AH5. We know that that's always going to be in AH, so I am going to hit $sign there. And then if we minus, we can put in that VLOOKUP formula. Okay, and I'll hit $sign in front of that AF5, and we want the 3rd column for the low value. Close that whole thing off. So right now we have value minus low, and you can see there's just one extra little equal sign in there. I'm going to copy this one more time, and now we want that over high minus low. So we'll go bracket high. If you remember, the high is stored in the 4th column, minus the low, and I'll close that whole bracket off, and then we want multiplied by 100, and that is going to give us our actual value, and you can see it is 11, and we'll just say no to this smart fill and just make sure that all of our references are correct. So we have value, that's correct, and then AF5 is correct, and all of here. So now if I hit Just want to make sure that all my math here is correct. So we need that one links up with that one, that's correct. And then we want that one to link up there, that's correct. And then times 100. I think we need one extra bracket here at the end instead. Now I'll hit 100. And if I drag this down, that gives me all of my scores. So for 10-meter sprint, the highest would be 1, and that makes a lot of sense. So from here, all I'll do is just shrink these down a little bit so they don't change the decimal places on these a little bit. So those are all of our scores. Now for our total score, what I like to do here is just take an average of all of these scores. So I'm going to type in equals average, open that up, and I will select all of these scores and close that off. And what I will actually do is round this. So I'll type in mround, open this up, that is my score, and then I'll round it to a factor of 0.5, close that whole thing off, and that is my total score. And then I know that the difference is going to be 100 minus this, because the maximum total score that they could get is 100. So what I'll type in here is under difference equals 100 minus my total score, and hit enter. And I don't need any autofills there, so we can delete this. Now from here, we have our score. So this athlete, for their power score, has a score of 45.5 out of 100. The difference is 54.5. So in order to do a chart for this, what I can do is select these 4 cells, total score, 45.5, difference, and 54.5, and go to insert, hit a chart, and you can see it gives me 2 series here. But if I change this to something like a donut chart, and we'll do a little bit of work on this chart, we'll delete some of these things. I'm going to just move it over underneath my things here, and we'll edit this chart a little bit. What I'm going to do actually is just add a bunch of columns here so that I have a little bit of room to work. And we'll add a couple more. That should be enough. Okay, so if I click back into this chart, we have a few things that we can customize. So the first thing, chart style. If we make the background nothing and the chart border nothing, I can actually now type behind this. So if I had the value 100 behind there, if I put it over top of that, you can still see that value. So we're going to use that to our advantage. So we'll do that. And then in terms of my pie chart, I like to make the donut hole 75%. I think that looks a little bit better for what we're going for. And we do not want a border color around any of it. And then for my pie slices, I'm going to make it more of like our colors for this sheet. So maybe like a dark blue. And then for slice 2, I actually don't want that to show because I want it to look like just part of the score. Okay, so that's going to be our chart. Now, if I go back to my dashboard and I'm going to put the number in there, so equals, and I'll go to my data viz reference, that's going to equal the total score. So that's my 45.5. I don't need this box anymore because that was just to frame where it was going to go. So what I'll do is I'll remove the boxes and then I'll put it back around the whole thing like that. And then what I can do from here is take a copy of this chart, Control C, and then paste it on here. And if I shrink it down to fit in this box, the way that we've set this up, you can see that now the chart looks pretty good. It actually sits around where that number is supposed to be. And if we switch our tests around a little bit, so let's say these 2 tests weren't included. Whoops. Let's see where we went wrong here. Oh, because we need to wrap this in an actual if error. So let's try this. If we wrap this in if error, and then close the whole thing off, and then if I drag this down, now it should work still because it's not taking into account those ones there. So this should all work. But if we add tests and take them away, you can see how the score actually changes. So I think that that looks pretty good. Let's go back to our data viz reference. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out or put in some $signs so that we can actually copy and paste this. So that the date is always going to stay in the same spot. So let's lock that in place. These are going to actually move Okay, so we won't lock those in, but this is always going to refer to the values in this cell. So I'm going to just take out this $sign here of AF4. And I think that that is the only one that we would need to take out. Oh, AF2, that's referring to the date. AF5, that should all work. So enter, and I'll drag this one down a couple times and nothing should change. Whoops, it did change. Hang on one sec. AF4, oh, that's the wrong one. That's why I moved the wrong one. I need the one that is referring to AF5, sorry. I gotta lock the AF5 in place. Yep, so that should work. Okay, and what I should be able to do now is copy this and paste it down one, and with a little bit of editing, instead of score chart 2, let's see if that's referring to the right thing. Should be A14, and it is. Data viz reference 2021-0103, and then let's put some tests in there and see what happens. So let's try 10-meter sprint, counter movement jump, squat jump, pro agility, and beep test. So those all work. Let's just make sure all of these are referring to the right thing. So that's referring to the right thing. The date is still referring to the one up above. So we can actually change this to be AF12. And I should be able to, sorry, no, not 12. It should be AF11, my mistake. And I should be able to drag this down now. Good, and that all works. This should all be referring to the right stuff. So AF, data, etc. So this should all work. And indeed it does. And then our score should work too. So now what I can do is copy this chart. Let's put this score in the right box. So I'll type equals data viz reference total score, hit enter. We'll erase here and put our box back in, and then we'll do that one more time. So let's do score chart 3. We'll put some tests in there to make sure that it works. So it's really just a matter of fixing all of your references to make sure that everything works. And then I'll just fix this chart here. Take away the border, put the border back in. And then let's give these some color. Give it sort of a darker blue color because I think that looks pretty good. White text. And then we'll give this one sort of a reddish color. Maybe red with white text. So there's our score charts. Now we'll just fix these actual charts. So right now, I'll just change what cells this is referring to. So instead, we'll make it refer to the cells on part 2. Hit OK. And I'm going to copy this and paste it on the main sheet. And just so we know which one this is, we'll just stick it in there like the other ones. And we'll make this one actually red. So instead of that, we'll make it this red color so that it matches. And then we'll do the same thing for our last chart. So we'll copy this one more time and make it refer to our third score. And hit OK, hit copy, paste it on the main sheet here. Let me shrink it down so that it fits. Stick that right in there, and everything looks pretty good. So there you go. That's our score charts. And how this works is I can actually delete the tests, and the score will update to reflect the tests that are actually involved. If you remember, we should be able to change the names here. So like strength score, and we could change this one to jump score maybe, and they should all update. So that really is the end of our dashboard. And from there, all it is as simple as I'm going to basically delete all of the rows that aren't needed. And this is how our dashboard's going to work. So now if I go to print what we can do is, if we set the print margins to current sheet and landscape, scale, fit to page, and then for margins, I use custom numbers, and I usually use 0.05 on all 4 corners. And then under formatting, I turn off show grid lines and show notes, and then I align everything to the center, and then I turn off all of the headers and footers. And what you get is this sheet that prints really nicely all to one page. And if I hit cancel here, if I were to change any of these values, for example, we were doing a different set of tests, all of my graph would update. And if I go back to print, you can see the new updated graph. So I hope this video helps you out, and I hope this series has helped you out in creating this long-term dashboard for your athletes and being able to visualize multiple metrics together. And if it did, if you could like and subscribe to the channel, as well as share this video on social media, that would really help me out. And if you want to purchase a copy of this dashboard, you can find it at dsmstrength.com. So with that, we will start a new sheet next week sometime, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.